Right then, okay, this is a bit of an experiment. This is the first video that I'm doing in what will hopefully end up like being a series of videos um, about the programming of this game. This game is Ridiculous Space Battles. I already do videos about the progress of the game and the design of the game and stuff like that, but something that I've never really done is a load of videos about programming, mostly because I do things differently than most people, and I kind of get a bit glum about it, thinking that no one's interested because everyone just uses Unity and doesn't care how to like make a game from scratch or use C++ to make a game. But I've decided that I don't care, and I'm going to make the videos anyway. Um, if you're just a gamer who, I mean, not just, but like if you're a gamer who's not interested in like C++ programming, then you might find these videos a bit obscure. But I'm going to keep doing like the development blog ones anyway. There will be very little footage of the game in these videos. I'm just putting this here so everyone can understand this is what I'm talking about. It's an auto battler. It's a space auto battler game. It's kind of cool. But these videos are going to be about C++, how I use C++, what I do, what I don't do, and a quick bit of background about like why anyone would care. I started programming when I was 11 with a Sinclair ZX81 with 1 kilobyte of memory. So I've been doing it for 44 years, on and off. I was a musician for a while. So I've done it a lot. I worked at a studio called Elixir. They did it was Evil Genius, but I didn't work on that. I worked on a different thing, and Republic the Revolution, which I did work on. Then after that, I worked at Lionhead. I was one of the main coders on the movies, and then I went back to being indie, and I made Gratuitous Space Battles, the Democracy Games production line, a whole bunch of other games I won't bore you with, and I published some games as well. So I've written a stupid amount of code over the years, so I thought people might be interested in like how I work and what I do. Who knows? And if they don't, who cares? I'll enjoy doing the videos. So that's a basic intro of what this is about. It's also not going to be like a typical kind of YouTubey video with lots of kind of YouTuber, hey, what's up? Welcome back to the channel, because I kind of find that a bit patronizing and stupid. So I'm probably gonna radically just talk like a normal human being and try and discuss stuff that I think is interesting, and I'll read the comments, so I'll be interested to know what people want to know more about and what they don't. That's the intro. So I'll probably close this window down now. I can hide it. Look at the stats. I'm only doing this to have a rough idea like what kind of game I'm talking about, right? I'm not here to show off the game, but it's this sort of a thing. So I'm going to hide that now so it's not a distraction. He says, thinking he knows how to hide it. Is it that? It is. Right, like one of the first things to talk about, which might seem a little bit weird because this is a programming video about how to code, is the office. So I'm lucky in that I used to code in like a spare bedroom, which was tiny. Now I have a room that's probably about the same size, to be honest, but it's like dedicated. It's not a bedroom or anything, so that's really handy. Like it's so much better if you have like a dedicated room. The room can be tiny, doesn't matter, right? As long as you can fit a desk, a chair, and a monitor in, it doesn't matter. In fact, that's probably better because you don't want any distractions. But it's quite good to have complete control over your environment and to have a room that's set up the way you want. The ceiling of my office collapsed about a year ago, and it had to be redone. And as a result, I had to strip the room completely empty, and I put hardly anything back in it. And when I'm coding, if I look above my monitor, I can just see like one framed picture, and it's me at my solar farm. Long story. And my desk has my PC on it, my monitor. Now it's got a microphone on it. And it's got a tedious form that I've got to fill in that I don't want to forget. That's it. Now, I know some people like loads of action figures and loads of stuff and things they like all over the place. It's just my opinion. I should point out, in case it's not immediately obvious, that I'm autistic. It's just my opinion, but like, I think visual clutter is unhelpful. There is some background part of your brain that is like processing everything around you, and the less stuff you have around you, the more you'll focus on what you do. So I have a very Spartan desk. I know everything on my desk. The one weird thing, I won't bother waving a webcam around, the one weird thing I have on my desk is this. And it's a gardening hammer that was free with something. I don't know. The only reason I have this is I have what they call coil whine from my PC power supply, and replacing it will just be a pain. So occasionally it hums and buzzes, but if I bash it with a hammer, it stops for 10 minutes. But it upsets me that I've even got that on my desk. So my top tip is to have like a really empty environment. Also, get the best stuff. I know that's easy to say because stuff costs money, but I once gave a talk, I would say 17 years ago, at a thing where I said you should get an amazing office chair. I have a Herman Miller Aeron. You can just, they all, yeah, can't get the hang of it. This, it's the default chair that like programmers pick, and like office workers, well-funded startups pick. Mine was £800, and it was a demonstration showroom discount, right? And you think, how can it? And I gave this talk like, what did I say, 20 something? I don't know. It was a long. It was more than 15 years ago at least, because I've lived here 15 years. Yeah, actually, maybe it is only about 15 years. But anyway, it seems ludicrous. Who would spend that amount of money on a chair? Because it's just a chair. But this is the same one. They're indestructible. They're like made out of the stuff that they make black boxes for airplane. They're not, but they could be, because they're just indestructible, and they are so comfortable, and they are so adjustable. I am more comfortable sat in this chair than anywhere, than my bed, my sofa, anything. It is the most comfortable thing you can imagine. It is brilliant, and people will happily spend like $1,000 a year on a Unity license, which I'll come to. But you wouldn't even dream of spending half that on a chair. But you sit in that chair all the time, and it's a one-off purchase. And it's an expense, you know, it's a business expense. I could talk for hours about how people are just stupid about chairs. Also, I hurt my back as a boat builder when I was young. So, and like, take care of your back. If you're a software developer, you will spend most of your life sat down and like hunched, and everything will be bad. You really want to invest in forget the computer. I don't know how many PCs I've gone through keeping the same chair. Get a decent chair, okay? And the gamer chairs with the kind of funny backs and everything, like if they work for you, okay, but like these to me seem like more like fashion over comfort. You know, Herman Miller Aeron chairs are designed with like ergonomic science. It's not just like it looks cool on Twitch. But try lots of stuff. I mean, like, really invest in it. Get the chair that's right for you. This is definitely the right one for me. Most people I know my age who are full-time software developers, if they have any say in it, they have one of these. But whatever. The other thing is the monitor. I'm not going to wave a webcam around the room, but I have a huge monitor. I mean, like it's 5120 by 1440 res. It was ludicrously expensive when I bought it. They're a lot cheaper now, and it's curved. And you sort of think, because everyone's so used to a flat monitor, you sort of think a curved monitor would be weird. No, it's awesome. It's also amazing for games. Battlefield 6 on this looks phenomenal. But they are expensive. So like, get the biggest monitor you can, and preferably 2, or get a huge mega one like this. The huge ones are better because you can just drag stuff around more easily and more smoothly. But if not, get 2 monitors. Partly for debugging, so you can have your game in one window. Like I do not work like this. That's in a separate area of the screen. I can always see all of my code and the game, right? But when you're profiling, which you should do, you should optimize and profile your game, and I'll do a whole video about it. There's a lot of windows, a lot of data, a lot of charts, and if you can look at it, the charts and the analysis in one window and your code in another window, it's very helpful. Yeah, get a huge monitor. So yeah, your environment, I know this, I said I talk about C++ and I'm just talking about chairs, but it's really important. Get good stuff, right? And I'm not just saying that as some arrogant git who can afford it. I'm just sort of saying, like, save up, because then you won't replace it. My chair's lasted forever. This monitor is quite old now. If you get good stuff, it lasts forever. You end up paying less over the long run. So okay, C++. Let's get into it. I'm actually gonna close the game. You won't notice it. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. By the way, if you're thinking he's already got a crash in his code, it's a shutdown thing in Erlang. I know I got to fix it. I think it's only when the debugger's around anyway. So yeah, I code in C++. This is C++. Why code in C++? To be honest with you, I have not used C# really at all. And I know a load of people use C# and some people use Java and whatever. I like C++. There is so much C++ in the world that if you get stuck on something and you want to look on Stack Exchange for an example of how to do it, there's tons of C++ examples, right? Because they go back decades. And these days, like AI chatbot, coding assistant, stuff like Grok and Claude, if you say, hey, I'm making a game in C++, write me some code that does this, it's great. It's good at it because there's a billion trillion lines of C++ online. It has a reputation for being hard to learn and dangerous. It is a little bit hard to learn. I don't really know Java, and definitely don't know Java. I don't really know C# at all. But people always say, "Oh, it's C++, but without the difficult and dangerous bits, like garbage collection and pointers." I use pointers for everything. I don't understand how it's possible to code without pointers, but we'll talk about that later. And I don't mind garbage collection. So for anyone who's like new to code, garbage collection is like cleaning up. So where's an example? Where do I create something? That's just a pointer. That's a point. I use pointers for everything. Oh, here we go. Here's some code. Blah blah blah. So this line here that I'm highlighting, I hope you can see all this. Let me know if it's really hard to see and it compresses badly. So here I'm creating a new object in C++, the user interface for a beam laser drone. So, I'm calling new, and I'm creating, I'm allocating some memory there, the size of this object, and I get a pointer to it, right? The thing that people come unstuck with in C++ is now I've got this pointer, which is just an address in memory. Now I've got this pointer that was associated with me creating it. It's my job to delete that later. I've created it. I have to delete it. Otherwise, it will never get deleted until the application is closed, right? But like, that's easy. um, you know, I track this stuff. I don't see it as a big problem. So when I'm deactivating this drone, I'm calling a thing called safe delete. It's just a macro that's like, if this is not null, if it's a valid pointer, delete it, delete the object. And I'm just in the habit. So I don't have, my games don't leak a ton of memory that I'm aware of. With a game like this with a lot of objects, I'd soon notice. So it's not a problem for me. C++, I think, is fantastic. It lets you do everything. Other higher level languages that people go, hey, look, this is 100 lines of C++ and you can do it in 2 lines in the new language. I sort of think that's fantastic. What if you want to do this? And then it's like, well, you can't actually access that sort of stuff in this language. And it's like, well, I don't care how many lines of code it is to do a thing, because like anyone who's been coding for 40 years, I can type very, very fast. My wife sometimes thinks I'm being sarcastic if I'm typing fast to make a point, and I'm not. I'm actually typing that fast. And you will just learn to type fast as you do a lot of it. I don't care how many lines of code it is to do a thing. I'm not obsessed, and I think I should do a little thing about the difference between programming and software engineering, because they're different. I'm not obsessed with... People are always telling me I do everything wrong, because like, oh, you don't use Unity, it saves you loads of time. You use a long-winded language like C++, that wastes loads of time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm told this constantly by people who never ship anything. So it's like, well, I don't know how much time I'm wasting, but I still seem to be more productive than almost anyone. So like, maybe it just works for me. But having said all of that, right, I'm not one of these obsessive dicks. Like, if you make games in Java, good for you. If you can ship and you can do everything you want and it's productive and it's the language that suits the way your brain works, that's great. Same with Unity and whatever. I like C++. I'm not scared of it. I'm used to it. And to me, it fits my worldview. I like having access to all the details. I'm the kind of person that wants to know what's happening inside that. And obviously you've got like assembly language, and then you've got opcodes and everything below this. So everyone's got their point in the stack at which they're comfortable. Some people love assembly language, but to me it's kind of gibberish. I like C++, and yeah, that's as much as I'm going to make my case for it. So another thing to talk about is the development environment. People talk about IDEs. I'm not sure where to pitch this, whether or not everyone's watching it is an experienced coder or not. An IDE is an integrated development environment, which basically means it's a bit of software. This window that we're in here, all of this is my IDE. Other IDEs are available. This is Visual Studio. I've used it for I don't know how long, at least 20 years. I don't know, longer. I don't know that it's the best. It might not be. But I do have a few things to say that I think will be helpful about IDEs in general. The first one is to pick the one that you like and then stick with it. And I say this a lot about a lot of different things. If my house was burnt down and then I had to move somewhere else and buy a new PC and install all my stuff again, I install Visual Studio. I know where everything is. I know how to do everything. I know where all the tedious stuff is that I need to get to in it and all that. Just notice some of the windows I click on in this don't actually come up. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I know this toolbar at the top like the back of my hand. I know how to use everything. I know my way around this very, very well. And that's, we're actually in the debugger actually. If I just stop it, yeah. That's the most important thing, right? code is really complicated. If you want to code a really big, complicated game, you're going to be working on an incredibly complicated, interrelated system with a huge amount of stuff going on, right? And it's going to fill your brain, and it should do. And that's what I love about it. So your brain will be full of this does this and that does that, and this system I've coded does this other. The last thing you want to be thinking is, how do you do this in Visual Doodad? It needs to be second nature. So like your IDE should be like your house. So like you know where everything is, and you know it, and you don't change stuff without a good reason because you like it the way it is. And the only plugin, well, I have a bunch of plugins for optimizing, but like the plugin that matters is something called Visual Assist. There's like a toolbar for it here that will launch a window that will then show up on OBS. It's crap, isn't it? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So it adds a bunch of options to the code, and it lets me see stuff that I wouldn't otherwise. This little tomato icon is something to do with it. That's the only like plugin that I have. And something that I would say about this stuff is don't mess around too much with your IDE. You can customize everything. I could change the font, right? I may have changed the font. I don't know. I don't think I have. You can change the font. You can change the colors of everything. You can change the layout and the way things work and everything, blah, 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 blah. I would say don't do this. Just get used to the default, because the default is not like random. Like it's based on what most people do. And then, you know, if you need to update your IDE or install a new version of it or whatever, then you're good to go. You don't lose a day setting up everything as you want because you just use the default. I don't even think I changed the colors. Visual Assist may have changed the colors for me when it's installed, but I've gone with their defaults, I think. I'm not one for customizing the IDE, simply for that reason that then, like, if all your customizations are lost, then you're distraught. I'd rather just get used to how it is. So I'm also going to talk about Unity. I don't use Unity, right? So, you know, I make games, and I've never used Unity. I've tried it 3 times, and I just rage quit it every time. I think this is rubbish. Maybe it's really better now. I don't use it because I like engine coding, actually. But I also like control. I like to be in control. Every line of code in my game is written by me, apart from the sound engine, which is middleware that I've used the same middleware for 20 years. That gives you a lot of reassurance. If my game crashes, it's almost certainly my fault, and I can find that bug and fix it, and I like that. So I won't use anyone else's engine. Also, I find you're then tied to some company that changes its mind. You know, you'll be halfway through developing your game, and there'll be a bunch of bugs in like their graphics engine, and you're thinking, when are these going to be fixed? And then they go, oh, that's deprecated. We've invented a whole new system, which you've now got to learn, whether you like it or not, budgeted it for it or not, have time for it or not. Tough. We've changed everything. Or, you know, they will change some behavior that they think doesn't matter, and you've built an entire system around it. I have a lot of friends who use Unity, and I hear them talk about Unity, and it sounds hellish. Okay, I don't need to worry about what's broken in what version of my engine. It's my engine. And even if I do find a bug in it, I can fix it now, not like put in a request. The other thing is my engine is free because I coded it. And so I don't pay a penny to anyone. I get annoyed at paying the percentage that like Steam and GOG take. Paying a chunk to like the people who made the engine seems ludicrous to me. It's a bit of software, right? Visual Assist, I pay for it once to buy it. Okay, they don't take a cut of my game sales because I use their IntelliSense. This is nonsense. Anyway, I know a load of people do it. I do 2D games. I've done an isometric game, and I use 3D hardware. I'm coding in a 3D way, but if I was making a 3D game, I'd probably use someone else's engine because I'm not good at 3D maths and I don't like that sort of code. I love 2D code. I do very complicated 2D games, but I don't like 3D code stuff. So it might be different if you use Unity, but the amount of developers, indie devs, who they do like a 2D platformer or a 2D puzzle game, and they use Unity, and it's like, this is massive overkill. You don't need this huge hulking thing to make a game. You see on this left-hand window there, these are the folders with all of my code in. That's the engine there. So my engine starts there, and it ends. I mean, okay, there's a lot, but not that much. I don't use this. This is like zip file code from somewhere else. I don't even use that. I should delete that. I don't use zips. So it ends there. And a lot of stuff goes on in there. Some stuff that you think would be in the engine isn't. It's in the game. A lot of UI stuff and a lot of like particle systems. But what's the source code for Unity? You probably need a pickup truck to deliver it. And you don't use it and you don't need it, and it's overkill. And don't give a chunk of your money to the people who made yeah, IDE. I don't send a check to Microsoft because I use this. I bought it. Anyway, whatever. On that point, I'm going to talk about DirectX 9. So my game, let's launch my game again. I'll try and get like a big battle going or something. Let's see. Oh yeah, we can. Yeah. It might crash because I'm in the middle of changing some stuff. If it crashes, I'll launch a different battle. But we'll just speed into it a bit. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in my game, and it has a lot of effects. Some of them might be turned off. I'll turn them back on. It's a bit. I'll slow things down because it gets a bit mad. There's quite a lot, and I use quite a lot of effects. I use a fair number of shaders and stuff, and I want really huge battles. This isn't the biggest battle by any stretch. I'll put it to a bit faster speed. That's the actual speed. This is DirectX 9, and like if you're doing a 2D game, that's probably fine, right? When you look at the differences in like later versions of DirectX, they are very, very, very focused on 3D games, and doing stuff that you probably won't do if you do a 2D game. And kind of people think I want cool shaders like when stuff distorts. That's not new. That's not part of the latest drivers. It's been around forever, and very easily in DirectX 9. You can code like pretty complicated, rich stuff with that version. If I was starting from scratch and I didn't know how to code, I probably would use the latest version of DirectX. But I know DirectX 9 really, 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 really well. Okay, because I've made, I don't know, like more than a dozen games with it, and quite big, complicated games with like DLC and expansions and hundreds of updates. So I know how to do all this. I know how to do it in DirectX 9. I think coders are, generally speaking, too flippant about going, yeah, I've learned that now. I know that. Yeah, I've learned the new API. I've learned a new language. I learned Rust. Last week I learned Python. And it's like, no, you didn't. That is like saying, yeah, last week I learned Spanish. And it's like, oh, really? Write a book in it then. To really know a programming language, or to really know an API, and I don't just mean like know what functions to call, but know how slow each one is, and know how applicable each one is to your use case. That takes years, if not like decades, to really know stuff well. But the trouble is there's a bit of a kind of like macho show-off gunslinger attitude with coders, where they're like, I know 17 languages, right? I've been coding for 44 years, and if you ask me how many languages I know, I'd say one. That's not quite true. I know bits of a few others, but I would only go for a job in C++, because I would expect if someone hired me to do C++, they'd want me to really know it. So this is why I use DirectX 9. DirectX 9 has one downside, which is you can only really use, like, is it 2 or 4 gigabytes of video RAM? Which, of course, these days with modern video cards is ludicrously small. You can work around it, and I do. I never thought I was ever going to hit it, and I now know in retrospect an old game of mine did hit it and crashed. I would love that limit to go away. I would love that single change without having to recode everything or adjust everything to be the latest version of DirectX, but I'm not going to do that. So I use DirectX 9. If you are using DirectX 9 and you're sort of thinking, oh, maybe I should upgrade to using whatever's new, no, don't do it unless you have a use case, unless you can sort of go, I've seen an API thing that is brilliant. I can't do it in DirectX 9, and so I'm going to upgrade. Excellent, do it. And if you're starting from scratch, probably use the latest DirectX. But I'm very happy with DirectX 9, you know. Okay, I'm going to talk about an actual coding thing now. Be consistent. This is one of the most kind of underrated things, right? So there's okay, look at this, right? We'll just look at this one function. I'm going to zoom in just in case, like, you know, it's not working very well. Okay, this is a very, very simple, tiny little function, right? I always know exactly how I'm going to do a thing, including like how I lay code out. I put the curly bracket on this line. Okay, some people put it up there. I have to zoom out again. I hate that. But whatever, you do what you want, right? But I always do things pretty much the same way. So some people change their approach a lot. Okay, so like for containers, I use STL almost all the time. Sometimes I use arrays. And the best thing you can do is just like stick to whatever you do. Okay. Don't change the way you lay out your code or format your code. Don't use one kind of function for a thing and then for the exact same thing, like implement it a different way. Like if I'm going to change the way I do something, I changed the way I do certain for loops recently. So I went through every line of code in my game and I changed it so that they all use the same system. So like if I've got a kind of local constant thing, it's always up there. It's always at the top. It's not, I would not, like some people would kind of like put this wherever it's going to, just above wherever it's going to be used like this, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, as long as you always do the same thing. So if I come across that, I don't know what it was. What was it? Oh, Jesus, I've deleted it now. I think I can do that, can't I? Oh, that goes across various things, doesn't it? Is it down here? Yeah, so, okay. So if I come across this, you know, I know where in code it's going to be, right? I know it's always going to be up here, right? I always put like the code for my constructor and deconstructor in a class at the top. They're always the top two functions here, so I know where they're going to be, right? Unless it's incredibly performance sensitive and I need to force something to be in line, I never put any code in my header file, right? I always put the public stuff above the protected stuff, okay? Um, I'm not saying you should do any of this. What I'm saying is what you do should be what you do. So when you look at different areas of your code, it should always look the same. Okay, because what you're doing here is you're reducing cognitive load, which might seem bizarre for a programmer, but actually it's absolutely vital, because all of your cognitive abilities should be programming. It should be what you're doing. If I said, hey, welcome to Positech as a coder, Bob, read through all the code so you know what's going on. There's a lot. You'd think, Jesus, the last thing you want to do is be thinking, hang on, where would he have put this? Where would this be? What would have, why is that here? So you want consistency. And again, it's like laying out your code like you would lay out your house or your bedroom or whatever. It's got to be everything in its place. I know this is a very autistic thing, but I find it very helpful to always have stuff laid out the same way. I couldn't cope. And this is another reason why I like to write my own engine and work on my own. Okay, all of the code is written by me. No one's going to come along and use a different format of stuff. No one's going to be naming variables differently than me. Okay, if you're using Unity, even if you have the source code to Unity, I don't even know how it works anymore. I don't care. But say you're using it, forget Unity. Say you're using someone else's engine, right? Some of the time you'll be looking at engine code, and some of the time you'll be looking at your code. If they're different layouts, different formats, different paradigms, different strategies, that's like, you're trying to read something in French and write in Spanish at the same time. Okay, you want minimum cognitive load outside the required cognitive load for the engineering that you are doing, and be consistent. Okay. It's going on a bit, this video, isn't it? Anyway, another thing, don't update anything ever. This is Visual Studio 2022. This was a huge concession by me, and I waited until I had literally retired, because I'm kind of retired, semi-retired, before I updated it. I was using Visual Studio 2013. Before that, I think it was 2010 or something, and that was a fraught process. Actually, going from 13 to 22 was fine. I reckon within 2 or 3 days, I was back to the productivity, right? And I was very impressed by that. Good job, Microsoft. But what I'm talking about there is just like updating my IDE to the latest version of the same thing. Okay. People update, coders update far too often. You don't need to update to the latest version of Unity. Unless your game cannot ship without the latest version of Unity, don't get it. Same with Unreal, same with whatever the other engines are these days. Don't do it, okay? Because it is disruption, and things will break and things will change, and things that used to work won't work. There was a thing to do with accessing the debugging information in STL lists that stopped working when I upgraded Visual Studio, and it drove me insane. That was what the 2 days were, getting that fixed, because I'm like, I can't work like this, because I knew how it worked before. Don't update anything. Feel free to update your phone or your gaming PC if it's a separate PC. Don't update stuff. It's not worth the risk. And again, cognitive load. They can just move one window somewhere and it will slow you down. They can change one hotkey and it doesn't matter. I mean, you can rebind stuff, but don't update unless you've got a load of time set aside to adjust. This might be a really autistic thing, but I'm trying to make these videos for hardcore C++ programmers. So, hey, Anyway, that's my top tip. So I'm just going to talk about 3 other things quite quickly. One of which I might revisit in a later video. First thing is how I actually conceptually lay out my code. So this is what Visual C++ calls a workspace, and you have multiple projects in it. It doesn't matter, but I have 2 projects. One is which is called Engine 2, because I'm really good at naming stuff, which is my current engine. And the other is Ridiculous Space Battles, which is my game. So these are 2 different projects. It really doesn't matter, but conceptually it's quite nice to have that separation. If I am going into the engine to change something, I need to sort of think, do I really need to change this? Is this an engine level thing, or is this just for this game? I actually take a copy of my engine when I make a new game so that I can go in and break stuff. So if I change some of this, it won't break production line, so it's okay. But conceptually I think it's good, and the best way to think about it is the engine is kind of like the toolkit. So it's the stuff that doesn't matter what game you're making. So if I look in my engine, I've got some really simple base class. Like I have a sprite class. Sprites are quite complicated when you've got how many 20 years of using this, probably you find lots of things you might want to do with a sprite in different ways, so that there's a lot of functions there. I know I've got code that passes CSV files, so I use Excel for some balancing, and that's quite involved. And I've got my basic graphics engine stuff, stuff to handle enumerating a list of files, stuff like that, stuff to handle keyboard input, my own pack file system, stuff to manage textures in memory and pack them and unpack them and stuff like that. Some new stuff for this game that I put in the engine because I thought this is cool, where you're actually streaming textures interleaved in the frames, so you don't have any pauses. Stuff like that. I've got a thing called Fast Math, which is just great, which is lookup tables to fake cosine and sine. I'll do a whole thing on that. It's brilliant. I mean, it's not brilliant, it's obvious, but it's a huge performance boost. Stuff like that. But you'll see nothing in here about spaceships, right? Because that's all in the Ridiculous Space Battles. So the first division is, this is the engine, this is the game. But something else that I do is, actually, if you look inside Ridiculous Space Battles, I've got some folders. This is something that Visual Studio creates, which I sort of think, I don't want to see this. I don't care. Not interested. And this is the thing I had to put in to fix my STL thing. But so basically, I've got 3 folders, right? One of which is game, which is tiny, and that's stuff that's kind of to do with the app. So this is kind of the initial launching of the application, the closing it down, the getting what folder the save games is in, stuff like that. All of that stuff is in this folder called game, and there's a few other technical things in there. But then I've got 2 folders, and this is very important. I split all of my code into the simulation and the GUI. And my game is heavy on both, but they are totally separate. They're massively separate, and the communication between the 2 is as minimal as I can get away with, and this is very, very important. So here's an attractor drone. This is a little thing that you launch out of a spaceship. It sits in front of your ship and it sucks in enemy bullets. It's cool. So this is the code for an attractor drone. This is the simulation code. Right, and the class is called sim_attractor drone, sim, right, and it derives from another class, with another sim class. Okay, this has all the code to do the stuff, the mechanics of the stuff, to work out what bullets it can suck in, how many bullets it can suck in before it explodes, where it moves to on the map, all of the simulation stuff associated with that object, how many bullets it can be sucking in at once. All of this is managed here. If the GUI code didn't exist, it wouldn't matter. The game would still run perfectly. it would do all of this stuff. It's not dependent on the GUI at all. And actually, it's the base class. If I go into this, where I have a pointer somewhere, there, GUI drone, but it will actually create a derived class. Doesn't matter. But the point is, this thing here, GUI drone, pGUI, and I always call it pGUI. This is a pointer to another object that manages everything you see about this object. So the attractor drone does all its stuff, and it just has a pointer to the user interface, the graphics code for that thing. That's it. That's the only like connection. Okay. What I'm getting at is there's not a load of user interface. There's no sprites or DirectX stuff in here. Definitely not. This has got nothing to do with it. I could change the graphics API and I wouldn't change any of this. That's really important. You don't want spaghetti, which is where the user interface is full of code that handles the simulation, and the simulation is full of code that handles the GUI, and you don't know where anything is, and all kinds of weird stuff happens then, because like I could just not draw the drones for like debugging reasons, or because they're off screen or whatever, right? And I'm not going to screw up the simulation because it's totally separate. And obviously I don't draw stuff that's off screen, but it doesn't matter, because all the code that has to be processed all the time is in the simulation. That happens because it's part of my game. What you see on the screen is just a representation of the game. This is really important. If I look, I've picked on attractor drones. I just know, because I've done a lot of videos over the years, that I've picked on something randomly and it's going to totally undermine me, isn't it? But no. So this code is about like a shockwave effect that's drawn on the screen when it absorbs a bullet, right? That's not simulation stuff. That's GUI fluff, okay? So the only thing I'm doing is this looks p-drone get world position. I need to know where it is to draw it. Okay, so I'm asking the simulation code. The simulation code doesn't even know it's being asked, right? It's separate. It's so separate. If the only thing you remember from this video is separate your simulation and your UI, like really separate them. I have them in separate folders with a separate naming convention to force me to not mess up. And by doing that, if I'm in this code and I'm typing away here and I'm thinking, I could add a cool thing where it suddenly does something else, I won't code it here because I know I'm in a GUI bit of code, and I'll immediately sort of think, I've got a cool idea for a thing you could do here. I need to hop back into the sim code. This is really important. You should do this. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about in general is decoupled code. I don't know what the technical term is. They talk about close coupling and stuff. You know, I read Code Complete a long time ago. I may have read Design Patterns. I don't know. Your code should not be spaghetti. Okay, it should be very distinct. So something I got shouted at a lot on the internet was for criticizing the code of a game that was just pasted, and someone said this is all the source code, and I think it was Balatro, and I'd never heard of it. I don't know. I know it's a big huge hit game, but it was like all one file. And I said, this is terrible software engineering, right? And got loads of abuse from people go, you know what you're doing, and you never sold as many games. And I do know what I'm doing, and I am a software engineer. I'm not someone just hacking stuff together. I've got a lot of experience in it. And huge props to making a game as popular as Balatro. The reason I make this point is that I make very, very large games with there's a lot of code in this. I mean, there's a lot of code in this. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to keep going, so I'll have to shrink them all later. When you're working on something that's really big, and I learned this because I worked at Lionhead, and I worked at Elixir. If you've got 20 coders or more, you got to be organized. You can't just let people like put stuff where they want. You got to do a lot of stuff to kind of organize stuff. And because like one coder might be working on like the mines, the user interface for the mines, okay? But the person working on like the camera code is someone else, and they're working on it at the same time. Yeah, we got source control, blah blah blah, but it is really very beneficial if the code you're working on is contained. Obviously code has to refer to other code. Like here I am in something, the mine code, and I'm calling, I'm referring to another class because I have to, because I need to go through this enum in order to work out what to do, and then I'm calling a function from another class. But don't do this constantly. Don't do it all the time. Don't let your code all be massively interrelated. What I'm getting at is, in a particular class, if I needed to delete this code because I don't need it anymore, that should be okay, right? Because the relationship is not kind of like intertwined too much. You should be as modular as possible. And to kind of make this point again, let's pick something randomly. So I presume people like know this, but like this is a class for contrails, and there's like public functions and there's private data, and normally there's some private functions as well. Let's pick something else. Yeah, some private functions here, right? I worked with someone once who shall remain unnamed, who, when I queried the fact that everything in all of his classes was always public, and I was innocently wanting to know if I didn't understand, he was like, oh, you have to make everything public anyway, because like you always end up like referring to it, so you might as well make it all public. And this is the most unbelievably wrong thing imaginable. Okay, that's not software engineering, that's hacking stuff together. Okay, here's the UI for a cloaked ship, right? But a lot of it is internal. No one else needs to know the implementation. No one else needs access to the texture for the ship within the cloaked version. No one else needs to fiddle around with all of these, I call them agitators, that sine wave everything. No one else needs to know the internal implementation of this code. All the ship that's cloaked needs is to sort of go, yeah, draw the cloaked ship. I'm not being drawn, draw the cloaked version. I don't care how you do it. That's your department. And this is all private because it's no one else's business, and it's important that that code is private to that class. Okay, and if you need to get at some of this, then I need to have a conversation with myself about, have I designed this wrong? If you always need other classes to come in and mess with the internals of the class you're working on, then you've separated your systems badly, or the design paradigm for your code is lacking, is wrong. Okay, it's good to see a lot of private stuff and hardly any public stuff. That's a sign that you've thought it through and that things are organized. I feel that very strongly. This is the longest video I've done in years, and hopefully it's vaguely interesting. Please leave a comment, even if the comment is like you're stating the obvious, or if the comment is I have no idea what you mean by a class. I just want to know who's going to watch these videos. I'm going to make them anyway because it's fun, and I want it down on paper, as it were, that this is how I coded. Because there's a lot of really bad advice out there. Yeah, I'm not a genius. Like, if Jonathan Blow disagrees, then you should definitely listen to what he says. If Casey Muratori disagrees, just listen to them. They're very anti-object oriented, whereas I love it. There are lots of coders out there, much smarter and more experienced than me, and much better at the really technical stuff than me. But there are an enormous amount of people on YouTube who, here's how you code a game, and they're still working on their first game. I've been coding for 44 years. I've been making games for 28, making commercial games for 28 years. I've been around a long time. I've sold millions of games, millions of copies of games. I know how to do what I know how to do. But I'm not saying I'm the last word in anything, but those are my credentials. I hope you liked the video. you know, please like it and share it if you do. It doesn't really matter. I'm not monetizing it. Don't care. But I hope you like it, and thank you. I will do more.